Snow fell in thick silence across the Dakota plains, burying the trail and softening the sharp edges of the world. Nora Clark pulled her wool coat tighter, the wind cutting through like knives. She had no business being this far out alone. Her sled had broken near the ridge, her mare had spooked, and now her boots crunched over white wilderness in search of something solid. That's when she saw it. Just a lump at first, half buried near a low bank of frozen brush. As she stepped closer, she realized it was a dog. Not just any dog. This one was thick-coated, with fur the color of dark cedar bark, and eyes that blinked once before falling shut again. Frost clung to its whiskers. It was dying. She dropped to her knees without thinking, brushing snow from its face. "Hey," she whispered, unsure why her voice shook. "Stay with me, all right?" No one would come looking for her out here. She had no ties in town, no kin to speak of. Nora had been drifting from odd job to odd job since leaving Kansas after her mother passed, chasing some shape of a life she hadn't quite found. But here, in the middle of nowhere, was a heartbeat besides her own, and she wasn't going to let it fade. She unwrapped her shawl, tucking it around the dog's stiff body, and pulled him to her chest. The animal didn't resist, just let out a sound low and broken. "You're not done," she muttered, teeth chattering. "Not today." With shaking arms, she lifted the bundle and turned back toward the rocky bluff she'd passed an hour ago. There was a cave there. Dry enough, maybe warm enough. She had flint in her pocket if her fingers would work long enough to strike it. Step by step, she trudged through snowdrifts, her boots sinking deep, her legs burning. The dog whimpered once, then went quiet again. She whispered stories to it, half nonsense, half memory, anything to keep both of them from disappearing into the cold. When she reached the cave, she collapsed just inside, clutching the dog as she scraped flint against stone again and again until a tiny flame caught. Firelight danced on the stone walls as she pressed the dog close to it, praying its chest would rise. It did. Slow, shallow but steady. And as the wind howled outside and shadows flickered, Nora didn't know that miles away, a Lakota elder stirred in his sleep and whispered, "The debt has been paid." By morning, the storm had passed, leaving behind a sky so sharp and blue it almost hurt to look at. Nora blinked awake, stiff from cold, and curled protectively around the dog, who now breathed with a fragile rhythm. The fire had burned low, but held enough embers to coax back a flicker of warmth. She reached out, ran her hand gently over the animal's head. "You're still with me," she whispered, voice hoarse. He opened his eyes, deep, intelligent, and ancient in a way that startled her. She hadn't noticed it last night in the dark, but his right ear was torn, healed long ago. Scars crisscrossed one shoulder, and a feather was braided into the fur just behind his neck. This wasn't just any wild dog. He'd belonged to someone, recently or a long time ago, she couldn't say. Still weak, he tried to rise, paws scraping at the frozen cave floor. She steadied him, letting him lean into her lap until he sank back down. "Easy now," she murmured, tearing a strip from the hem of her underskirt to wrap his paw. "We're both still half broke." Outside the cave, the world was silent, untouched snow stretching in all directions. But Nora froze when she spotted something strange. Tracks. Not hers. Not animal. Boots, 3 sets. Close. The prints came down from the ridge and stopped just outside the cave, too fresh to be from yesterday. Whoever had stood there had watched, then left. She scanned the hills but saw no one. Heart racing, she ducked back inside, whispering, "We're not alone." She built the fire higher, pressing her back to the cave wall, glancing every few seconds at the mouth of the opening. Hours passed, the sun sliding across the sky. Just as dusk began to bleed across the snow, movement stirred on the ridge. Figures. 3 riders, all on paint horses, wrapped in fur-lined hides. Lakota. She'd seen a few back in town, but never this close. They didn't approach fast, just slow, steady, like men who didn't need to rush to be feared. One of them dismounted at a distance, arms raised, palms out. He was older, his long braids streaked with gray, his eyes fixed on the cave. Nora's hands tensed around the dog, unsure whether to run or kneel. But the old man simply said, "That dog is of our blood." His voice was calm, almost reverent. "And so now, maybe, you are too." Nora swallowed, heart thudding. The dog stirred in her lap. Something larger than her had just turned toward her life, and she didn't yet know whether it would carry her home or carry her away. Nora stood slowly, the dog still nestled in the blanket at her feet. The elder remained just beyond the snow line, his companions behind him, silent as pine shadows. There was no threat in their posture, no weapons drawn, only a waiting patience, as if they already knew she'd step forward. She did, but carefully. "He was nearly dead when I found him," she said, voice dry. "I couldn't just leave him." The elder nodded once, deep and solemn. "His name is Tahu Wanji. One life. He disappeared 3 winters ago during a blizzard, defending a child from a grizzly. We searched for days." His gaze dropped to the dog. "We gave him back to the snow." Nora glanced down. "He found his way home." The other men dismounted now, walking slowly toward her with respectful distance. One carried a water skin, the other a bundle wrapped in buckskin. "We watched you carry him," the elder said. "The storm should have taken you too, but the ancestors hold on to threads." Nora's throat tightened. She wanted to ask what that meant, but something about the moment made her feel like words might break it. The man with the water skin approached and offered it. "You're cold. Drink." She took it with a small nod, warmth seeping through the leather to her fingers. "Why did you come?" she asked. The elder pointed to the horizon. "I woke with a dream of a white woman in the snow carrying fire and blood on her back. When we followed the trail, we saw the tracks, your boots beside his. You walked a long way for something that did not belong to you. I didn't know he was yours. You didn't need to." He paused. 100 years ago, a woman came from the east. She brought sickness to our camp and tried to run when the fever took hold. But before she left, she saved a child. That child was my grandfather. He told me, one day her spirit will return in a stranger, and she will carry our pain again. Nora felt the snow under her boots shift, as if even the earth was listening. "I just wanted to help," she whispered. The elder stepped closer, his hand outstretched. Not to her, but to the dog. Tahu Wanji lifted his head weakly, then licked the man's palm once before resting again. The elder looked back at her. "You helped more than you know." And with that, the balance of things tilted. Nora wasn't just a woman lost in the snow anymore. She was something else now. Seen, named, and remembered. They didn't demand anything of her. No questions, no payment. Just an offer. Come with them. Warmth, food, shelter, nothing more, nothing less. Nora hesitated only a moment before nodding. She wrapped Tahu Wanji tighter in the blanket and followed them into the snow, the 3 men making room for her on one of the horses. The ride was quiet, save for the wind brushing through the pine trees and the occasional groan of the saddle leather. The elder rode beside her, speaking only once. "You may not understand yet," he said, "but your feet are walking a path others dreamed before you were born." It took half a day to reach their village, nestled in a low valley near the frozen river. Smoke curled from the tops of round lodges, and children's laughter drifted faintly in the air, soft as a lullaby. A few heads turned when they entered, but no one stared. No scorn, no fear, just quiet curiosity. One woman stepped forward and gently took the dog from Nora's arms, cradling him like a baby. "We will care for him now." Nora nodded, arms suddenly empty and aching. The elder led her to his lodge, the flap pushed aside to reveal a wide space ringed with woven mats, painted hides, and a low, glowing fire at its center. "Sit," he said, motioning. She did, folding her legs under her, warmth prickling against her skin as her body thawed. A bowl of stew was placed in her hands without a word. She ate slowly, trying not to cry. It had been days since real food, since real kindness. As she sipped the broth, the elder sat across from her and lit a long-stemmed pipe, the smoke curling into symbols she couldn't read. "Your spirit walks with someone from long ago," he said. "When we lose something, the wind does not carry it away. It hides it, waits until someone's heart is quiet enough to hear it return." "I'm not anything special," she whispered. "Just a woman who lost her way." "So was she," he said softly. "The one who saved my grandfather." Nora looked into the flames, her breath slowing. She didn't know what she had stepped into, only that the ache in her chest was no longer loneliness. It was something larger, a thread being pulled tight. She'd entered their fire expecting only to warm her bones. But somewhere between snow and silence, she'd found a place that might become hers. And in the soft crackle of flame, the ghost of a debt long buried whispered, "Remembered." That night, Nora lay on a woven mat near the elder's fire, the heavy scent of sage curling through the lodge like a memory. Sleep came fitful and strange, full of images that weren't hers. Riders on bareback horses, a woman with wild red hair standing at a river's edge, a child wrapped in furs, coughing in the dark. At dawn, she awoke breathless, unsure whether she was herself or someone else entirely. Outside, the village stirred gently. Women carried water from the river in polished gourds. Children gathered snowberries in woven baskets. A few men, bare-chested despite the cold, worked at shaping new arrow shafts near the fire circle. The same woman who had taken Tahu Wanji approached her with a calm, quiet face. "He's resting. He remembers you." Nora followed her to a small shelter lined with deer hides. There, the dog lay curled near a fire, his breathing strong now, his coat combed clean. He lifted his head when he saw her, tail thumping weakly. "Hey, brave boy," she whispered, kneeling. "Guess you're not finished yet." The woman watched her, then said softly, "Most would have walked past him." "Snowhide's suffering well." Nora shrugged. "Snow's never hidden anything from me. It just makes the world quieter." The woman smiled faintly. "Maybe that's why he found you." That afternoon, the elder called a small gathering at the center of the camp. He motioned for Nora to sit beside him as he knelt before the fire pit, now surrounded by stones carved with symbols older than the nation itself. "Our people do not forget," he began, his voice rising just above the wind. 100 winters ago, a woman with eyes like this one came among us, bearing sorrow and sickness. She could not save many, but she saved one. My grandfather." His gaze swept the circle, then fell on Nora. "When Tahu Wanji returned to us, we thought only of the dog. But then we saw her, the same eyes, the same silence, and the same courage." Nora's throat tightened. "I don't know who she was." The elder nodded. "Maybe you don't have to. Maybe it is enough that her spirit knew where to return." He held up a feather, long, dark, rimmed in white, This is not for decoration. This is memory. We place it only in the hair of those who carry something sacred. Gently, he set the feather beside her. You do not have to stay. But if you leave, know this. Your name will be carried here, even when snow covers every track. And for the first time in her life, Nora felt what it meant to be seen, not just with eyes, but with remembrance. The days that followed passed not in a blur, but in a slow unfolding, like petals thawing under spring light. Nora stayed. Not because she was told to, not because they made space for her, but because for the first time in her life, space seemed to fit her. She helped gather firewood and stirred thick stews over open flames. She braided rope with the younger women and learned the songs they hummed while threading beads through leather. Every act was deliberate, grounded in something older than obligation. And each day she visited Tahu Wanji. The dog grew stronger, his steps firmer, his eyes sharper. He followed her now, not out of weakness, but choice. Where she walked, he walked, tail low, ears alert, as if guarding a piece of her spirit that had not yet learned it was safe. The elder said little, but watched often. One evening, as the fire glowed low, he sat beside her outside the lodge. You will need to decide soon, he said. Winter is not over. Nora nodded, gaze on the stars. I know. The road back to town will open again. You could return. Take what you've learned and let the world forget. She turned to him. Would you want me to go? He smiled faintly. I want you to choose. That is what your spirit never had before. She thought of her life before. Endless rail cars, rented beds, towns that forgot her name the moment she left. I don't think I was meant to be remembered out there. The elder touched his chest lightly. Then perhaps you were meant to be remembered here. Later that night, she dreamed again. But this time, the woman with red hair didn't vanish into snow. She stood beside Nora on the hilltop, both of them watching a child run through the trees. When Nora awoke, her cheeks were wet, but her chest was light. She understood something now. She wasn't replacing the woman from the elder's story. She was completing her. That morning, as snow fell in fine threads, the tribe gathered without instruction. The elder handed Nora a thin strip of hide. On it was carved a symbol, a dog beside a fire. It means, where the lost are kept warm. He tied it around her wrist. This is your place now if you want it. She didn't speak. She only nodded, heart full. The wind passed over the hills, whistling through the pine. Somewhere beyond, winter waited. But here, within a ring of lodges and quiet memory, Nora stood not as a stranger, not as a wanderer, but as one whose name the wind had remembered all along. The trader's wagon came 2 weeks later, creaking into the village with bells that jingled like distant memories. It was pulled by a tired mule and driven by a stout man with wind-burned cheeks and eyes that missed nothing. He greeted the camp with nods and laughter, bartering tin goods for pelts, glass beads for dried meat. When he saw Nora tending a fire with the elder's granddaughter, he tipped his hat. Didn't expect to see a pale girl this far out, he said, more curious than cruel. Need a ride back to town? The question hung in the air, heavy as storm clouds. Nora straightened, brushing ash from her skirt. Town still standin'? She asked lightly. He chuckled. More or less. Schoolhouse burned, Marshall got replaced, and the Reverend ran off with his housekeeper. But the saloon's pouring, if that's what you're after. The girl beside her stiffened, uncertain. Nora gave her a small smile. Sounds like nothing's changed. The trader leaned on his wagon. Got room, if you're tired of cook fires and snow. She looked past him, out toward the horizon, toward the path that once led her away from everything, and into silence. There was no tug in her chest, no longing in her bones. "I appreciate it," she said, "but I've already been tired of the wrong places. Now I'm learning how to be tired the right way." He nodded, grinning as if he understood more than he let on. "Suit yourself. But don't forget, there's always room for one more runaway." Nora watched as the wagon rolled away, bells fading into the trees. Around her, life continued. A boy called for his dog. A woman sang while scraping a deer hide. Smoke curled gently into the sky. Tahu Wanji padded over and sat at her feet, his eyes on the place where the wagon had vanished. She knelt and scratched behind his ear. "We could have gone," she murmured, "but I think we already arrived." That night, by the communal fire, the elder told a new story. It was about a woman who once wore no name, who wandered into a snowstorm and emerged with a heartbeat that wasn't hers, but carried her through. He didn't mention her directly, but when the children's eyes turned toward her and the younger ones reached for her hand, she knew they had placed her name in the story anyway. And for the first time in her life, Nora didn't just belong. She was becoming someone worth remembering. Nora stood at the edge of the pines, her breath fogging in the dawn air, watching the steam rise from the river like spirits lifting stories into the sky. Tahu Wanji sat beside her, still as stone, ears pricked forward. Something about the morning felt different. Quieter, yes, but also listening, as if the land itself waited for a decision. Behind her, life stirred slowly in the village. The women would be waking soon to stoke fires, the children would begin chasing smoke through the snow, and someone would bring her a bowl of cornmeal porridge like they had every morning since she arrived. She had become part of the rhythm, without asking, without needing permission, and that terrified her more than any cold ever had. The elder approached with no sound, only the creak of snow under careful steps. He stopped beside her, folding his arms. "The forest knows your breath now," he said softly, "and it waits to see if it can trust your steps." Nora nodded, unsure if the weight in her chest was fear or reverence. "I never thought I'd be a part of something," she said, "let alone this." "It is not the land's job to keep you," the elder said. "It only offers a place to stop running." He looked at her, eyes deep and clear. "But it will test you." "How?" she asked. He pointed to the tree line. "Old paths, old debts. Sometimes they come back wearing new faces." She turned toward the sound of hooves in the distance. Small, quick, not like the heavy horses townsfolk rode. Moments later, a boy burst through the trees, breathless. "Riders!" he gasped. "Two men, not from here." The elder narrowed his eyes. "Armed?" "Rifles, saddlebags." Nora's stomach dropped. There was only one reason white men came this far out with saddlebags full, not for trade, for claim. Minutes later, the riders appeared at the edge of the village, eyes scanning, hands twitching near their belts. One of them spotted Nora and nudged his horse forward. "Well, hell," he grinned. "Ain't you the girl that used to clean dishes at the Dusty Trail Saloon?" Nora said nothing. Her hands clenched, her back straightened. "Heard you vanished after that winter storm," the man said. "Figured the wolves got you." He looked around. "Guess I was close." The elder stepped forward slowly, placing himself between the riders and the fire circle. The village watched in silence. Nora didn't speak, didn't step back. Tahu Wanji growled low. In that moment, surrounded by smoke and pine, she understood. The past didn't knock politely. It wandered in uninvited. But this time, she wasn't the one without a name. She had a people now, and a place. And that meant the snow wouldn't swallow her story again. The man on horseback leaned forward, smug and easy, reins loose in one hand, the other resting casually on the butt of his rifle. "Didn't think you'd fall in with redskins, Nora. Guess you always were strange." She didn't flinch. Not this time. Not now. Around her, the village held its breath, not out of fear, but readiness. They stood not behind her, but with her. "This isn't your place," she said evenly. "Turn around." The second man chuckled, spitting in the snow. "We're here for trade. Heard the tribe's been keeping dogs and women now. Figured there might be use for both." The words slithered into the cold air like poison. Tahu Wanji bared his teeth, stepping forward, low growl vibrating through his chest. The elder didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "You are not welcome here." The first rider squinted. "You threatening us, old man?" "No," Nora said, stepping into full view, her shadow long in the snow. "He's not. I am." The silence that followed was thunderous. She could feel her legs shaking, her heart pounding, but her voice did not crack. "You'll get nothing here but cold ground and quiet stares. These people saved my life. That dog saved yours once, too. You just didn't see it." The men shifted uneasily. "Come on, Nora. Be reasonable. We're just passing through." "Then pass through," she said. "But leave the past where it belongs." The elder reached for a long walking stick beside the fire and planted it in the snow. "You can leave with dignity," he said, "or without horses. You choose." The weight of the village shifted, subtle, collective. Every man, woman, and child stood straighter. Some held blades, others bows. The riders looked around, realizing what they'd failed to understand before. This wasn't a camp. It was a home. And Nora was not a guest. She was kin. "We'll ride on," the first man muttered. "Didn't mean offense." "You did," Nora said, "but now you'll remember the lesson." Without another word, they turned their horses and disappeared down the trail, swallowed by trees and silence. Nora stood still until the wind died down and the fire crackled softly again. The elder stepped beside her. "You didn't speak for yourself alone," he said. "I know," she whispered. Her hands were shaking now, but not from fear. From something older, something earned. That night they sang around the fire, not a song of mourning, but of welcome. Of a woman who stood against her past and named it out loud. And the tribe sang her name not like it was borrowed, but born. Winter softened its grip in the weeks that followed, trading its bite for still mornings and the slow return of birdsong. The village stirred earlier each day, children chasing the meltwater as it carved new paths through the earth. Nora found herself changed in ways she couldn't explain. Not louder, not bolder, just steadier. She no longer flinched when someone called her name, because now it was used, not thrown. The tribe had given her one of their own, Wiaka Ayaye, which meant, "She who walks with echo." Not because she repeated someone else's path, but because when she moved, the land remembered. Tahuwanji walked beside her each morning as she carried wood or tended herbs. He'd healed fast and stayed close, his bond to her unspoken but unmistakable. The children would whisper tales about him, the dog that had wandered into death and returned, not alone, but with someone the ancestors had been waiting for. She didn't correct them. In truth, she liked the sound of it. One evening, as stars broke over the horizon, the elder called her to the same fire where her journey had begun. He sat with his legs crossed, the pipe between them, the smoke rising in slow spirals. "Do you know why the dog found you?" he asked. "Because I was there?" she offered. He shook his head gently. "Because he was always meant to. Because the wind that carried your cry was the same that once carried hers." "The woman from the story," she said softly. "Your grandfather's savior." He nodded. She saved a child from sickness and vanished. You saved a creature and stayed. Two ends of the same breath. He handed her a bundle wrapped in deerskin. Inside was a dress, not new but beautifully kept. Soft leather, beaded with care. For when we plant again, he said. For when you dance with us. Her throat caught, emotion rising like spring water under thawing earth. You're sure I belong? You belonged the moment the snow didn't stop you. That night, they sang her story by firelight. Not in grand words, not in dramatic tone, but gently, like a lullaby returned after a long absence. The children memorized the rhythm. The elders nodded in quiet approval. And somewhere beyond the circle, in the trees beyond the firelight, the wind curled through the pines like a ribbon and whispered her name into the cold. Nora sat beside the fire, her face lit with flame, and understood. She had not just repaid a debt. She had rewritten it. Not as an outsider returned, but as the echo the land had been waiting to hear again.